Hari Om. Gajananam bhuta ganadi sevitam kapitta jambhupalasara bhakshitam umasutam shoka vinasha karanam namami Vigneshwara pada pankajam. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste and a hearty welcome to one and all for today's 16th session of our series, Discovery of Inner Strength and Happiness. In short, DISHA. A program to lead us into an inward journey to discover our inner strength and happiness through Bhagavad Gita. Our Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir shall give a prelude to the topic of the day. Dr. Sanjay Mehrotra shall present the day's topic, Knowledge of Avatara and its result, covering verse 9 to verse 15 of chapter 4, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Dr. Sanjay Mehrotra will also explain the 5 instruments of knowledge from Tattva Bodha to help us have a better understanding of the day's subject. Today, the teaching quiz shall be presented by Srimati Vidya Prabhu, who, along with Srimati Aruna and Srimati Nita Podar, have formulated the question and answers. Srimati Chetana shall commence today's session by chanting and explaining Om Sahana Vavatu, an ancient Sanskrit mantra from Taittiriya Upanishad of Krishna Yajurveda. Chetana, madam, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinau Adhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This prayer is from the Krishna Yajurveda, and so is the Shanthi Patha for the 2 Upanishads, Katha Upanishad and Taittiriya Upanishad. So let's take each sentence. This prayer begins with Om Sahanau Avatu, which means, may the Lord protect and bless both of us. Both of us is the teacher and the student. Sahanau Bhunaktu, may he nourish both of us. Here nourishment is in the form of knowledge. So the first 2 lines talk about Ishvara Anugraha, or getting the grace from the Lord. Sahaviryam Karavavahai. Whatever is required to gain this knowledge, may we make an effort for that. How? On the part of the student, he should have Shraddha, commitment, retention, and recollection of the knowledge imparted. And on the part of the teacher, he should have commitment, time, patience, compassion, and ability to communicate this teaching. So this line therefore talks about prayatna or self-effort. Tejasvi now aditam astu. Let us both be illumined by this study. Let the understanding not be vague, but be brilliant and shine forth. This knowledge is not a matter for inference. It is about me as the subject and has to be understood very clearly. Therefore, let what is studied be brilliantly clear, free from any errors. So here this line talks about Medha Shakti, or our memory power. Ma Vidvishavahai. May we not be subject to any misunderstanding and dislike. Let nothing come between us so that this communication is complete. It is talking about having a harmonious relationship between the teacher and the student. And then it concludes by saying Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We chant Shanti 3 times, not because there are 3 types of Shanti, but there are 3 types of obstacles that can deny us this Shanti. So let there be freedom from those problems. And what are those obstacles? Adi Daivika. Let the problems not arise from the forces over which we have no control, or from all beings around us, Adi Bhautika, or from factors within ourselves, Adhyatmika. According to Pujya Swamiji, through this Shanthi Patha, the student is asking for 4 boons from the Lord. First, he's asking for Jnana Prapti. May the Lord protect us by giving the knowledge. Second boon is Jnana Nishta, May the Lord bless me with the ability to assimilate this knowledge in order to transform my life. Then prayatna. May I be able to put forth the necessary effort in order to achieve moksha. And finally, he asked for shraddha. May I have faith in my teacher. Thus, I pray that all the three capacities, physical, physiological, and mental, be available to me in a manner that is conducive to my pursuit of this knowledge. And in chanting these three Shantis, I pray for freedom from these three possible obstructions. Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you, Chaitanya, for a nice explanation of a very popular mantra always chanted whenever there is a master and student coming together. And as nicely explained, there is a simple meaning and there is a cryptic meaning. These four things are the cryptic meaning. Jnana prapti. Whenever we get spiritual knowledge, we realize one thing, that there is no need for protection because nothing can happen to me as Atma. That is the significance of Jnana prapti. Once I have spiritual knowledge, this is the highest form of protection because I don't need protection. And once there is Jnana Nishta, that means once a person becomes a Jivan Mukta, then a person is able to revel in this knowledge. Of course, these steps involve Prayatna and Shraddha, and that is the more cryptic meaning which Swamiji has given us. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. To slightly elaborate on what Shiv Kumar ji mentioned about DISHA. When we study the Bhagavad Gita and sometimes look back into the earlier chapters, we suddenly find this verse is very familiar, but I don't recollect the real significance. The beauty of the Gita is the more we repetitively study, you will get a deeper significance. Now, this significance or this effort in the study through DISHA is, through the study of these verses, how can I discover inner strength? How can I discover happiness? Because that is what we want. Let us look at the title of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, because the title itself is understood, it can transform our own life. The title says, Jnana Karma Sannyasa. There is a role play to be done. The role play is fake it before you make it. All of us are here for one purpose only. We are here for Parama Purushartha. That means we want spiritual wisdom. Let us assume that we have spiritual wisdom. We are jnanis. And not only jnanis, let us assume that we are a sannyasi. So Swamiji talks about two kinds of sannyasa. One is called a Vividisha sannyasa, where a person is evidently a sannyasi because of the dress and the orthodoxy. The other is called a Vidvat sannyasa. Vidvat sannyasa is one who has moved from the traditional triangular format of Jiva Jagadishwara, but has understood that I am Atma, and as I am Atma is the same as Brahma, you have moved into the binary format. Now, once you are a jnani and now a Vidvat sannyasi, how does such a person act? And that is the whole title. Now, all of us have so many roles to play in our daily life as body, mind. From the morning till the time we go to bed, there are hundreds of things to be done. Now, anchor on your higher self, allow your body, mind to do whatever it has to be done, but you stay back as a witness, watching all the time, and play this game of being an akarta, allowing the body mind to do whatever it is supposed to do. Swamiji has given a nice example. Supposing you have sold your house, but you're living in the same house as a tenant. Right now, although nothing has changed, but just because you have sold the house, the sense of ownership or the sense of a burden that I am that owner is not there. Another nice example is whenever you're working or whenever you're cutting a jackfruit, whatever instrument or the hand that you touch, it gets stuck and it does not become functional. But on the other hand, if your fingers are oiled properly, and if the instrument is properly oiled, you can enter into karma, but not be bound by karma. And that is how, through Jnanam, you can discover freedom, because normally any karma produces punya or papa, and both these can bind you. So today we have Dr. Sanjay Mehrotra, a leading cardiologist, who will enlighten us on this aspect of the 4th chapter, where we will move a little deeper into understanding the nature of what is avatara, what is God realization. At the same time, there is a beautiful topic that we are touching in every class. However many times we study the Tattva Bodha, it becomes useful. Dr. Sanjay, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you, Dr. Hegde, for that wonderful description. Now, the purpose of an avatara is defined in these verses, and of course, how we understand an avatara, and as he said, the bit of how we obtain the knowledge and what are these 5 perceptions of knowledge, I will take. As we know, this universe is a cosmic system, and whenever there is a disturbance, the cosmos itself will find an appropriate method or way to defend and maintain an order, or you can call it hemostasis. And dharma, which is what you call is the right attitude, right action, is embedded in it. The purpose of an avatara is to maintain that cosmic immunity. And if there is adharma, an avatara will come. Like Krishna says, that avatara can descend in every yuga if required. Next slide, sir. Now, Krishna is establishing dharma by teaching and preaching both Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, where he is telling Arjuna to fight and why he should fight. From the verse 9, Krishna comes back to the topic of mōkṣaḥ. And in 2nd chapter, he has told about what is Atmagyaanam, is the means of liberation. Now he's coming to tell that God realization is means of liberation also. So Atmagyaanam, or self-realization, or God realization are nothing but the same expression. Next slide, please. Please, sir. Here, an important practical guidance is provided by Krishna to obtain mōkṣaḥ, when he says, Janma karcha me divyam evam yet yaha vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punaha janma na eti mam eti saha Arjuna. Knowing the nature of God is also liberation. Here he says, first teaching was to know the nature of Atma and who is the Sthit Prajna. Now Krishna is telling, by knowing the nature or the realization, the nature of the God leads to liberation. Practically both are same. O Arjuna, evam tattvataha vetti, who thus really knows me divyam, my divine nature, janma, birth, cha karma, and action, na eti. He does not take, it does not take punarijanma tyaktva deham. After giving up the body, eti mam, he attains me. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yaha vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punaha janma na eti mam eti saha Arjuna. What is the real nature of Krishna? Once you know the real nature of Krishna, which is not Krishna Shariram, but the Akhilaha Dehinam Anatma Druk, this is the real Tattva, and we need to understand that real nature, which is his Paraprakriti. Yo Vetti Tattvataha Punarjanma na eti. That lower nature of Krishna, which is the Aparaprakriti, is also important, but he is here talking about the real nature of Krishna, which is the Paraprakriti. Realization of God has 2 stages, and I think this is what is important and recommended, that initially you go to the realization of the Saguna Ishvara. And later on only you can reach to the realization of the Nirguna Ishvara. It is very difficult to reach the Nirguna aspect of Krishna without going to the Saguna aspect. And the stages of growth of sadhana which has to be done to achieve that is Ekarupa Darshanam to Anekarupa Darshanam. And ultimately you reach the Arupa Darshanam. And what is the method to realize? This is a very important aspect. And that method is to manage the raga dvesha, which are brought about by unfulfillment of our desires. And that needs the control of our senses. Next slide, please. So in the 10th verse, Vita raga bhayakrodha manmaya mama upashrita bhavagyan tapasaputa madbhavam agata. Having resorted to me, freed from the attachment, fear, and anger, absorbed in me and purified by Jnana Yoga, many have attained my nature. The Savikara Upasana ultimately has to change to Nirvikara state. Although Savikara Upasana is easy and the great Jnanis and liberated souls have done that, ultimately the Nirvikara also has to be realized, which is the Aikyam with the Tattva Rupa of Krishna, which is the higher nature of Krishna, which is the Paraprakriti, from Rupa to Arupa. In the 11th verse, Krishna says that not everyone needs to seek the moksha. And if you seek kama, which is desire, fulfillment of desire, which is worldly desire, he is ready to help that also. Ye yata mam prapadyante, but the desire should be legitimate and means of accomplishment also legitimate. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tastanthaiva bhajamyaham mam vartam anuvartante manushya partha sarvasha. Most humans chase desire without knowing what is the reason of the desire. And even when the desire is fulfilled, the happiness is short-lasting. Next slide, please. A legitimate desire has to be fulfilled before one seeks moksha. Krishna says, for such a desire, he is like a parijata tree. Prapanna parijataya. I am like a parijata tree for a devotee. Tasmataiva bhajamyaham, which means to approach with his aim. Krishna will fulfill your desire also. Therefore, he blesses them with whatever they approach with. But the method should be appropriate. Manushya partha sarvasha. All manushya. He's exclaiming to Arjuna that all manushya, even if they approach him for desires, he fulfills them. The verse 12, which says, Kanchatah karmanam siddhim yajante ihidevata shipram hi manushe loke siddham bhavati karmaja. In the path of Vedic there are two paths of Vedic scriptures which are described. Karma marga, which gives you Anitya phalam, and Jnana marga, which gives you Nitya phalam. Now, karmaja siddhi shipram bhavati. Karmaja phalam, karma phalam is quicker as compared to the Jnana marga in Manushya Loka. The Jnana phalam is also quicker, but the result is good. But the most important thing is the preparation is the toughest job. Action done for the purpose of kama or desire, even to seek human goals, Purushartha would not give purnatvam. They have atripti karatatvam. Mostly you remain unsatisfied despite achieving small achievements. And there is dukkha mishritatvam and bandhak tattvam, which are defects of karma phalam. A karta always remains a bhokta. So karma alone will not give you what is your happiness, true happiness. To karma only gives you a background to become a jnana yogi. It gives you adhikari to become a jnana yogi, but you have to ultimately attain knowledge. Next slide, please. There are fourfold division which has been created by Krishna, which he says in the 13th verse, which are based upon your guna and karma. Chaturvanyam maya shrishtam gunu karma vibhagasha tasya kartaram apimam vidhi akartaram avyayam. What Krishna means by that is, know me to be the author but know me to be non-doer, the changeless one also. Varnas was created as per the gunas and karmas. And as I said, these gunas and karmas gunas are also embedded in the universe, but they are represented in a human being with a certain characteristic which gives them that Kshatriya, Brahmana, Vaishya or Shudra characteristic. Krishna says he created these division of labor and action. Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi. I am involved and I am the doer of the activities, but at the same time, with the akartaram, know me to be detached from all these karmas, which is what is important for the Krishnas to tell, that although you continue to work in this world, continue to do what is required to be done, continue to do your duties, but the most important, akrit tattvam has to come into you, because otherwise, any desire which leads to karma, which leads to a desire leading to a karma, will always be associated with unfulfillment. And that is the important aspect of a karmi rather than a karma yogi. Next slide, please. Namam karman limpanti name karma phale spraha iti mam yah abhijanati karma bhi nasabadyate. Namam karmapi limpanti. Karmas do not affect me. That is Krishna's nature, by creating tension, anxiety, and not only that, karma phale api me spraha nasti. I do not have even the concern for the results of the action. So Krishna says here, mam yah itti abhijanati. So the one who knows the secret of mind. And what is the secret? Freedom in spite of activity and responsibility. This secret, whoever discovers this secret, saha karma bhirna sabhadyate, such as Bhagwan is not bound by his karma, a jnani who has become a yogi, who has understood his true nature and he is abiding by that nature, is not bound by karma as well. Evam gyatva kratam karma purve api mumukshubhi. Kuru karma eva tasmat tvam purve purvataram kratam. Having known this, action has been performed by ancient seekers of liberation also. Therefore, you perform action only which has been done formerly by the ancients. Next slide, please. In this verse, Krishna says that the self-knowledge or Jnanam is neither really a secret nor is unique. Although in the past he has said that it is a Rajaguhya, it is a secret, but here is saying it is not. All the ancients and forefathers have known this. Purve mumukshubhi evam jnatva. All those who knew it also did not run away from their duties, because the rishis in those days were grahasthas mostly. So he says, do not run away from the grahastha ashrama and take sannyasa. That is not required. Tvam api karma eva karu. You also perform your duties. What type of karma? Purvahi purvataram kratam. The same karma which your forefathers have performed. Next slide, please. Now, what is this self-knowledge or Atmagyaanam? Coming to the Tattva Bodha part of it, what we discuss in Jnana Yoga is the knowledge of the essential nature of our real self, the real I. In the scriptures call it Atma. So the self-knowledge gives you freedom or the highest Purushartha out of the four Purushartha, which is called as mōkṣaḥ. Artha, Kama, Dharma, mōkṣaḥ. How do you attain this knowledge and what are the instruments of knowledge? And these instruments of knowledge in the Tattva Bodha are called by a technical word called Promaanam. Next slide, please. How does one get liberation and understand the self? This is the most important question. And of course, the answer lies in obtaining this knowledge. So where can one get this knowledge? Of course, a Shastra is required, a guru is required, a teacher is required who will decipher this knowledge, because this knowledge is cryptic. It is not easily understood by a common human being. So you need something called as Guru Shastra Upadesha, because our mind are deluded and the real nature is hidden by a wrong interpretation of ourselves in the word because of our ignorance. So our mind requires development, and this is the enlightenment and mōkṣaḥ. To be able to understand our true nature is mōkṣaḥ. So this is an attitudinal change in somebody's self. Next slide, please. how does one obtain knowledge of anything? If I want to know something about an object, how do I perceive that object? So that means the perception or sense organs are very, very important for obtaining the information. But also is important that you should have a previous knowledge. You should have a memory of that. And all the previous knowledge is obtained through the grades through which the information enters our brain system, what we call as the Antagyanam. And these are 5 sense organs. And these 5 organs of perceptions all are called Paurusheya Pramanani. What are these Paurusheya Pramanani? Next slide, please. And as a scientific understanding, sense organ receive information. It goes through various neural pathways to our brain. The information is analyzed by the brain and mind. And what is important for all this to happen, we need a sentient being, which is the consciousness which is present in us, like the electricity in the bulb to light the bulb. That consciousness is our real nature, and we have to understand that. Next slide, please. Now, the sense organ and the brain functioning together to create memory and retrieving information is called mind. In Sanskrit, it is called manas. Mind presents the information as a doubting faculty, which the decision has to be done by our intellect, which is called as buddhi. And this is followed by a sense that I have that understanding. I have that feeling. I know it, which is called as the ahankara. Together, all this is called as antahakarana, which are the processes in the mind stuff called chitta. These are all terms which come in our studies when we read these scriptures, and it is important to understand. And that is why Tattva Bodha is important. Next slide, please. Now, how do you attain this knowledge? There is always an observer which obtains the knowledge. The knower who knows the knowledge, we call it pramata. The knowable which can be known, I'll call prameya. And the process of knowing, which is pramana, and the knowledge achieved by the pramana is called pramiti. These are certain terms which are utilized in most of the Tattva Bodha literature, and that is why I have used to elaborate these words. Next slide, please. Now, what are these Paurusheya Pramanani? One, of course, which is the most important, which is the first one, that you have some very, very obvious perception through our senses, which is available to us for perception, and that is called as pratyaksham. An object can be seen, a sound can be heard, a color can be seen, which is evident to us. This is called as pratyaksham. Then the second one is called inference or anumanam. We can obtain knowledge by knowing something by an inference. If there is a smoke on the mountain, you know there is fire. That's an inference out of that. And this is used in Brahma Sutra as one of the description. The third one is called postulate. In Sanskrit, it is called as artapatti. And the fourth one is called comparison. In Sanskrit, you call it upamanam. And the fifth one is called non-cognition. And in Sanskrit, is called anupalabdhi. For practical purposes, only 2 are important: perception and inference. And surprisingly, most of the scientific methods also use the same kind of logic. It's called as the Shastra of logic, Nyaya Shastra, which utilizes the same method. Science utilizes the same method of coming to an understanding about a process. Next slide, please. Now, what is the method to obtain the self-knowledge or Atmagyaanam? One requires appropriate Promaanam to obtain the self-knowledge. Now here the Pancha-Pram have a problem. Here we are wanting to know the self, which is the seer himself. The subject himself wants to know itself. And here the subject who is wanting to know himself, as soon as he wants to objectify a subject, the whole process is lost. To know this, we need the 6th Pramana, and that is the most important. What is that 6th Pramana? This is to use Shastra, and it is called as Shastra Pramana or a Shabdra Pramana, which is like a mirror to reveal me, also known as Apurusheya Pramana. That is why Guru Shastra Upadesha. You need a Shastra, you need a Guru to decipher that understanding. And that is why the knowledge is very important. The Jnanam is very important. So what we do by obtaining the knowledge? Next slide, please. So how do you obtain the Shastra Pramana? You have to go to a guru, you have to go to a Shastra. And how do you obtain that information? Either by listening to a guru or reading that from a Shastra, which is called a Shravanam. Now, when you hear all these things, various doubts come into your mind, which needs to be clarified. And one requires confirmation, which means one needs experience. Now the experience is not possible because you are the self itself. So you cannot experience the self. Self cannot be experienced, and this is an important aspect of learning. So self-knowledge is freedom from self-ignorance. And this is the important aspect. Now, this is Jnana Yoga, which consists threefold exercises, as I told you. Next slide, please. So you have to do Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasana. So first you listen, then you introspect, and then you practice, which is the Upasana. So you go through Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and the Jnana Yoga is important. Now, once you have realized the information, once you have understood the information, which is the Mananam and Shravanam, you have to practice. And that's a very personal process. It happens in yourself. You have become now inward. And once you start experiencing that knowledge, it is called as Nididhyasana. Now you become a yogi, a Sthit Prajna. To say that how you become a Sthit Prajna, Krishna tells in the second chapter, Yada Vinyatam Chittam Atmanne Atmanne Avatistate Nispraha Sarvakamebhyo Yukta Ityuchade Tada. Krishna says, when the controlled mind, indifferent towards all objects, your desires have been controlled, your mind has been brought under some bit of equanimity, it has become samatvam, is established only in the self, and such a person is called a yogi. Next slide, please, sir. So in the end, let me just 1 second. So I have sort of understood this by saying that what are the final aspects of this is that Krishna has talked about his nature, and whatever way a seeker approaches him, he is available. His higher nature is to be understood, and one has to seek knowledge, the knowledge of our true self. And there are methods of obtaining this described in the Nyaya Shastra, which are the pramanas which we use to obtain the knowledge. Ultimately, what is important is Guru Shastra Upadesha, which is the 6th pramana, where Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam to reach the yoga, which is called as Jiva Paramatma Aikyam. Hari Om, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay Mehrotra, for giving us a very concise explanation of the verses from 9 to 15 of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, giving us whatever we should remember in the context of DISHA, and also giving us a nice explanation about how do we get this spiritual knowledge. What do we do for the rest of the class? I will just touch on some of these verses to say what is the importance, actually highlighting again what Dr. Sanjay already said. And we will conclude this class with a form of a teaching quiz to see how much we remember of all this. We are now in the second part, if I can say, of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, titled Jnana Karma Sannyasa. So all through, Krishna is helping us to get spiritual knowledge or Jnanam, and he is working on a sadhana of Karma Yoga, but how a Jnani would do Karma. And in this particular verse, Krishna is telling us, you know, we have just completed the avatara aspect, and Krishna wants us to realize the nature of God. And he says, if you can understand my nature, if you can understand my karma, then your purpose in your life is fulfilled. And thereby, when this body drops, you will not attain punarjanma, because you have understood your true nature, which is the nature of God. And this verse talks about that self-realization is God realization. So Shri Krishna is giving us a roadmap for moksha. He says, the more you understand the nature of God, which is the same as one's true nature. Now, in order to come to that, we have certain blocks in our mind. Our mind has got raga, dvesha, kama, krodha, bhaya. These are all the internal enemies which prevent us from reaching the nature of God. So Krishna now gives us in this particular verse, he says, what are the sadhanas that you need to do? And the sadhana that you need to do is karma yoga. Karma yoga deals with all these internal enemies of kama, krodha, lobha, mada, matsarya, and so on. Once karma yoga we have worked on, then we have moved from world dependence to God dependence. Then we shift our gears to Jnana yoga. And in Jnana yoga, you realize that we need to move away from God dependence to self-dependence and to understand Atman evatmana tushta. Again, the details. How do we work on? What are the sadhanas that we need to work on? Shri Krishna tells us. But the problem is all of us are so enamored by the world outside that whenever we go to a Mahatma, whenever we go to a temple, our requests to God are for the first three Purusharthas, for Dharma, Artha, and Kama. And Krishna says, I will fulfill all that. But remember, we are now students, or let us claim that we are advanced students of Vedanta, who have done Pariksha Lokan, who have inquired, what have I accomplished through Dharma, Artha, Kama? And once we develop a certain amount of nirvedyam or vairagyam, then we go to a guru and pursue Parama Purushartha. This is an important verse. Chatur Varnyam Maya Srishta. So in one way, Krishna says, I have created the division of the society into 4 categories based on guna and karma. But the next line is very important. He says, Tarsya Kartaram Api Mam, although I am the creator of all that, Vidhi. He says, remember, Akartaram. I am Akarta. I do not do anything because I am avyaya. I am infinite. I am indestructible. Now he is introducing a new topic. From now on, we come into the highest form of karma yoga, where we see ourselves as a jnani, see ourselves as an akarta. Although you are a jnani, you are an akarta, how is it possible to be able to do all your karma? For that, we should not have any desire for the fruits of these actions. Do your work, do whatever role that I have to do, but let there be no craving for the outcome. Shri Krishna says, such a person who follows this system, and he says it is not followed by you alone. Shri Krishna gives an examples of so many other people who have done this in the past and have attained to Parama Purushartha. With that, we conclude those 15 verses. Dr. Sanjay has touched on an important aspect. How do we get spiritual knowledge? To get spiritual knowledge, all that we have is the various instruments of knowledge. And as I already said, all these 5 instruments of knowledge are very useless when it comes to Atmagyaanam. For Atmagyaanam, none of these Pancha-Pramanis are useful. Then what do? We have to use Shastra Pramana with the help of a guru and the Shastras. How do we do that? We will see that in the next class, where we touch more on Shabda Promaanam. It will be in the next DISHA. Meanwhile, I will request Vidya Prabhu to lead us in a teaching quiz to help us to understand the 4th chapter that we have in a form of a question and answer. She will give us both the questions and the answers. Over to you, Vidya.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to DISHA session 16. Today's quiz is based on the detailed presentation done by Dr. Mehrotra on today's subject. The first question is, what is the intrinsic limitation of the Pancha-Pramanani? Answer. First, we have to understand, as Dr. Malhotra has spoken in his presentation, that 5 instruments knowledge that are available to human beings are called Paurusheya Pramanani. The first one being Pratyaksham, that is perception by using the 5-fold sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. The second one is Anumanam or inference. Third is Arthapatti or postulate. And fourth is Upamanam and comparison. The last one being Anupalabdhi or non-cognition. The answer, like science that can only study the objective universe, but cannot study the student, in the similar manner, these Pancha-Paurusheya Pramanani cannot study themselves. For example, eyes cannot see themselves, but require the assistance of external mirror. Paurusheya Pramanani are inadequate to give self-knowledge until one introduces 6th Promaanam, which will serve as mirror for gaining self-knowledge. And this 6th Promaanam is called Shastra Pramana, the scriptural teaching. The next question. This is based on the 9th verse of the 4th chapter. This question, here the question is, what does it mean, understanding the true nature of avatara? Answer, the true nature of the avatara here is the understanding that Krishna's body or Shariram is subject to arrival and departure. Real Krishna is not the Shariram, but it is the Paramatma behind the body who is free from birth and death. This knowledge leads one to liberation. Next, the third question. Name the 2 stages of the realization of God. Answer, Saguna Ishvara Jnanam or Nirguna and Nirguna Ishvara Jnanam, Savikara to Nirvikara. The journey in spirituality begins with Saguna Ishvara Bhakti or Savikara, but from Saguna Rupa, one must go over to Nirguna Rupa Jnanam or Nirvikara to realize the all-pervading Lord. In this journey, we move from the triangular format of Jiva Jagat Ishvara to the binary format Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Na Paraha. The 4th question. Which are the 2 steps in Saguna Ishvara Jnanam? Answer, Eka Rupa Ishvara Jnanam and Vishwarupa Ishvara Jnanam. Eka Rupa Ishvara Jnanam means appreciating the Lord with one form like Lord Shiva, Rama, Krishna, Durga, etc. One has to start with bhakti towards the Lord. As one grows in bhakti, the more the Lord will come nearer, which will further expand into Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakti, where Bhagavan is not in one form, but Bhagavan has got the whole universe as his form. The next question, number 5. Dash I is the source of sorrow. Dash I is the source of Ananda. Here, unhealthy I is the source of sorrow. Healthy I is the source of Ananda. Here, unhealthy, lower Jiva, they all represent the Apara Prakriti of the Jiva, of Apara Prakriti. And healthy, higher, and Paramatma I represent the Para Prakriti, which is more elaborated in the 7th chapter. So all the answers, all of the above answers are correct. The next question. What is the criterion to determine the purity of mind? This is a question based on the 10th verse of the 4th chapter. The answer, to what extent one can handle raga, dvesha, bhaya, krodha, will indicate one's degree of purity. So as Dr. Malhotra spoke in his presentation, that unfulfilled desires leads to anger. So FIR, the acronym FIR holds good as Swami Paramarthananda has presented, the frequency, intensity, and recovery. This self-examination should be our daily practice to get Chitta Shuddhi. Next question. When mind is purified, is it ready to attain moksha? Answer, not necessarily. Pure mind is not always a wise mind. Karma Yoga can give only purity, but not wisdom. Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam has to be practiced. Jnana Yoga, consistent study of scriptures under a competent guru, can only lead one to attain moksha. The next question. Lord speaks of Madbhavam Agataha in the 10th verse, meaning all spiritual seekers attain my nature. So what is meant by my nature? Answer, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam Brahma, the nature of fullness, Purnatvam, the nature of security. The understanding that Lord is not different from the observer, Saha Atma or Tat Brahma Aham Asmi. Next question. Which are the steps enumerated by Lord Krishna to attain my nature? Answer, Lord Krishna has given us 4 stages. The first stage being the spiritual goal, which should be the only priority, the Ananya Bhav. The second step, Sharanagati, the surrender to the Lord. Third is Chitta Shuddhi, purification of the mind by reducing the impact of Raga, Dvesha, Bhaya, Krodha. The final stage is Jnana Yoga, that is scriptural study to gain self-knowledge. Next question. Question number 10. Why should we respect a Guna Brahmana? Answer. Guna Brahmana is a Sattva Guna Pradhana person, not by birth nor by profession, but by his qualities. He can come closest to self-knowledge and liberation. Therefore, Guna Brahmana Ishvara Samipe Vartate. Our spiritual aspiration is to be a Guru Brahmana, to be able to attain the Adhikaratvam, to attain the highest goal of liberation. The 11th question. Mention the stages of becoming a Guna Brahmana and Gunatitaha. Answer. Karma Kanda will lift one from Tamas to Rajas. Upasana Kanda lifts one from Rajas to Sattva, so leading one to be a Guna Brahmana. Then Jnana Kanda lifts one from Sattva to Nirguna or Ishvara Aikyam to be a Gunatitaha. The last question. This is based on the 15th verse of the 4th chapter. How does Krishna teach Arjuna to be involved in action, but not to be affected by the action? Answer. Only Jnanam can save one from the disturbance caused by karma. For a Jnani, karma is a sport, and for an Ajnani, karma is a burden, having no sense of doership. This method has been used by our forefathers. So Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that with the understanding that the ancient seekers have performed this action, therefore Arjuna, follow the ancestors while performing your action. Thank you, Doctor. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thanks, Chaitanya Madam, for chanting and explaining the divine mantra. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Mehrotra, for an excellent presentation. And thanks to Vidya Madam for a wonderful educative quiz on the day's topics. Our hearty thanks to Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir for giving us a prelude to the day's topic and for your invaluable inspiration and guidance to our entire team. This brings us to the end of today's class. We will be back with the 17th session of DISHA on Monday, the 11th of July 22. But before that, on coming Friday, the 8th of July, let us join for a recap session of Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga at 6:45 p.m. local time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.